Welcome, Tolkien Poppers, to the Halloween special, where I talk to Hannah Polk, who indeed shares my last name because she's my sister. And in this episode, we talk about horror and its use by Peter Jackson in the Lord of the Rings films. I supplemented a little bit with some horror analysis of the actual books because Hannah has not read the books. Everyone, after this, if you find her online, bully her until she reads the books. Yeah. Tolkien Pop is pro-bullying when it comes to Lord of the Rings. But Hannah is a content creator like myself where she does a lot of things. She has a podcast, she has a Substack, she does streaming, she does all kinds of stuff. But the two main ones that I want to kind of point you to is that she has a podcast and Substack by the same name called Beware the Moon. Her podcast is a lot of reviews about horror movies and kind of exploring those. And then her Substack is creative writing. So if you're into horror, writing, or movies, you should go check out her content. It will definitely be worth your time. So without further ado, I will get us into the spooky, horrific, terrible conversation we have around horror and the Peter Jackson films. Until next time. What up, Tolkien Poppers? It is Nick here, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. It's the one, the only, the Hannah motherfucking Polk. Yeah. Who just happens to also be my sister. She is during the day, a bug killer. At night, a streamer. I don't know. What else do you do?
At different time of day, no job, off duty, do whatever I want.
In between, I'm an individual with different likes and characteristics.
I like to drink old coffee, and I promise I have a personality. Now I do streaming, so that's correct. I also do a podcast, which I guess I like technically stream it on Rumble specifically, but it's a VOD that I upload live basically. Because I will lose my train of thought so fast. So
what is that podcast?
It's Beware the Moon podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Substack. You can find it on Rumble. You can also find me on Twitter at Beware Moon. But basically, it's a horror movie review podcast. And the thing that really inspired me to do it was, first of all, I really enjoy horror, and I always have, but I have some traumatic experiences in my life. And so certain horror movies I find really trigger me and upset me, or they used to. Not so much anymore. There's still some that I absolutely would stay away from, like a Serbian film or like Martyrs or something like that. But I try to watch the more popular ones because I remember going to see Split specifically. And out of nowhere, there's this scene where basically it doesn't show anything, but it's implying that the uncle is having relations with his niece who's 7, and that really caught me off guard and it really triggered me. And so I was like, it'd be really nice to have a heads up for those things for people who have those kinds of triggers. And so that's kind of my I love the stories and I love the acting and I review the whole movie, but I also right up front, I'm like, if this is something that bothers you, you can't watch this movie. Absolutely not. So that's kind of why I started doing my podcast, because I found that listening to the Dead Meat podcast and watching Ryan Hollinger's videos really helped mentally prepare me for horror movies. So that's kind of part of what I do and why I actually have the podcast in the first place. I just recently released an episode on Zach Kreger's Weapons, which came out last month. So it's been out for a month, but yeah.
Look at that. You got a little tease there. So if you're a big horror fan, and maybe if you're not, but you're like want to watch horror, but you're curious and you're like, I don't know, I might experience some trauma or some triggers. Hannah has experienced the trauma for you, and she, is there to review the movies and to, give you, I don't know, are they spoiler free or no, or are there spoilers?
So the first section I do is like spoiler free. So I just tell you if I like it or not. A lot of the times I'll go through like, is the acting good? Is the story good? Is the writing good? That kind of thing. Are the effects good? Like if a movie has really bad effects, I absolutely mention that up top because I can't stand like phony physical effects. Like if I ever reviewed Wes Craven's Cursed, first of all, I don't think I could do it. Like you'd have to pay me a lot of money to review that one because it's like it's not the worst werewolf film on the planet, but like it's very cringe. So,
Cringe.
but I would mention things like that. That's kind of like up top, and then I go full depth into the story for people who are like, I can't handle not knowing things about the movie before I go in. I also let you know, like, is it jump scare heavy? Is it like physical horror? Like, are you seeing a lot of gross stuff? Is it more psychological? Like, I kind of let you know that up front because I think different people can handle different types of horror. Like me, I'm not a big torture porn fan. I can't do like the later Saw movies are like really tough for me. Even like the scene in Saw 2 where they throw Amanda into the needle pit. I remember watching that as a 10-year-old. We were at Nana and Papa's house and I flipped to sci-fi and they had it on and I was like, nope, I'm turning this off now. That was like I was done. I was like, John Kramer being creepy, gas in this house, people getting set on fire, whatever. People being thrown into pits of needles, I'm fucking out. So
yeah, the Saw movie is also not for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, and some people are like, I can handle this kind of psychological horror, but not that kind. And like, for some people, gaslighting is really triggering, like just seeing that because it brings them back to a place in their life that they can't handle. So I kind of like go through different things like that. So give people kind of a heads up before I get into the full review of like how I feel about the movie and what the story itself is. So.
All right, okay. So there's a little bit about Beware the Moon for you, which I'll let you plug the other stuff later because you also have a Substack, which you do some writing and creative stuff, which is good. But before we do that, and give everyone the goods, at first we gotta trail them along. We gotta give them the little freaking breadcrumbs before they get to the gingerbread house where you eat them and kill them. So yeah, everyone, you're gonna die instead of enjoy.
You're not supposed to be like throwing me under the bus like that.
But like in a horror way. So you'll die, but like die of amazing entertainment. So there you go.
It's that line in the third Harry Potter. You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
Exactly. The grim. So you gave us you gave us a little bit about you and stuff about at least the Beware the Moon podcast, but obviously you're my sister. But tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe some other creative stuff that you do, and then tell me about your Tolkien experience, Hannah Polk.
So I'm Hannah Polk. I'm this guy's sister. That says a lot in and of itself. And I'm Nick's sister. I grew up in Florida. I do bug killing, like Nick said. I'm in pest control. I have a focus on bed bugs, but I also do animal trapping, which is fun. Not a lot of guys do that kind of that kind of like pest control stuff. I also house sit. That's my other side gig. And then my other side gig is being a streamer and having my More Than podcast. Grew up in Florida, went to Tennessee for 1 year in college, did not like college. I was like, this isn't for me. Unlike this guy over here who's got like 3 degrees. And I was like, no big D's for me. And he's like, I'll take 3 big D's.
It's only 2 because I only have 2 holes where the 2 big D's can go. But I'm working on that third one. We'll see.
Working on that third hole? Wow, that's scary. Anyway, don't ask too many questions about that.
No, I'm an open book. You can send me DMs.
I see what your third one's looking like? Just send that subject line, the third one, question mark. Send
That's what this
pics.
episode title is going to be called. I'm not even going to have your name in it. It's just going to be called the third one, question mark.
Oh, incredible. People will be like, the third Lord of the Rings, and then they'll tune in and want to eat bleach.
Oh God. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from that, I guess. Transitioning to the third one, Lord of the Rings. No, I remember when we were kids, like the Lord of the Rings were coming out and they were super popular. And our parents were more conservative when we were younger. Like I wasn't allowed to watch Power Rangers until I turned 5. And then like on my 5th birthday, I was like, I can watch Power Rangers now, right? And mom was like, how the fuck do you even remember that? Like, why has this been a focus for you for a year? What the hell? So anyway, Lord of the Rings, mom was like scared it was too scary for us because I was probably, let's see, the first one came out in 2001, second one came out in 2002, and we saw those two on like DVD or something like that.
Yeah, we rented them from
I
Blockbuster.
I was 7, so probably I was around 8 years old when I first saw the first two. And then shortly after that, like when mom saw them, specifically the Urukai gave her nightmares for weeks. Like she still talks about that. It's so funny to me. Like of all the things, like really, like I get that they're ugly and gross, but that's just mean at that point. Like if that's your only reason, like there are much scarier things going on in Lord of the Rings than those guys. But
how dare you insult Zaddy Lurtz like that, you know?
That's what I'm saying is he's Zaddy Lurtz. Like we thirst for him, mom. We're not scared of him. Just kidding. Explaining the thirst for him to my mother is not happening. Anyway. Anyway, so we weren't like allowed to watch them for a long time because mom just thought it would scare us. And then when we got to being like 8, the third one was coming out kind of close-ish. I remember we started watching them then. We were obsessed with them for like a couple of months. And then we like never went to the movies when we were younger because we were kind of poor. So then we were shocked that we were going to the movies. And then when we got there, we found out we were watching Return of the King. And we were like, so we were so excited. And I just remember that really, like, it was really prolific for me in our childhood. And then kind of like after that, my favorite was the first one. No one ever wanted to watch the first one because I was in a house full of men, basically. And my sister just didn't really engage with Lord of the Rings too much. So, like, if anyone was going to watch it, it was going to be like Nick or Charles or Dad. And they always wanted to watch 2 or 3. And Dad, I remember I got sick of the third one when I was in high school.
Dad constantly had it. And he would skip it all the way to the battle at Minas Tirith every time.
And then once it was done, he would fall asleep.
Yep.
And then the movie would replay. And then I would get so sick of it just replaying, I would go turn it off. And the second I turned it off, he would go, hey, I was watching that. And I was like, no, you weren't. Your eyes were closed. Like, you're asleep, dude. Shut up. And he would get so mad. He'd be like, turn that back on. It's like, how do you even know you're sleeping? But every time. So I got really, really sick of the third one. But I mean, like now that I'm older and it's been like quite a few years since then, I love all of them. I'd say my favorite is still probably the first or the second. Even though the third one has Shelob and I love Shelob. The first and the second are just like there's something about them. I think it's that thing where like in fantasies, it's kind of like once you reach the ending arc of the story, you kind of are like, oh, I don't really want it to end. Yeah. And then it ends in a way that you don't write in your head. So you're like, oh, this isn't as cool as the other 2 books because this third one isn't what I wanted it to be. Kind of like, and always like in every single story, right? If it's a good, well-written story, your characters are going through development. And so they're not the same person they were in the first 2 books. They're someone entirely different by the time you get to the third one, usually. And so like the characters you fell in love with that made you want to be with the series are not quite the same. And so you kind of are just like, oh, like this isn't as like it's bittersweet. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that end of the series bittersweetness for me, where I'm like, it's cool that Aragorn's king and he deserves it. He's always been king to me, but at the same time, like I don't want these movies to end. I just want 50 more of them and fight sequences, which would actually get really redundant and boring. But still, yeah. So
No, I feel, and it's funny because like as a kid, because I wanted the action movies, and that's why pretty much why most I feel like boys our age were into Lord of the Rings at that
yeah,
time. But as I got older, not only the Fellowship of the Ring movie is my favorite now, and then even in the 3 volumes, like the books, that's my favorite book. And like you said, I think there's something. It's just very hobbity, down to earth, and it's kind of that initiation into the adventure. And
yeah,
like you said, the resolution is always sort of either sad or you feel like something's missing. You know, that same when you finish a really good series or good book series, a good TV show, that afterwards you're like, what do I do with my life? You know, including all
yeah.
the other things that you said. And like even the Hobbit movies, not my favorite, but I remember seeing the last Hobbit movie in theaters and then seeing the other ending where Bilbo says goodbye to the dwarves. And I was like, you know, on the verge of tears and being like, it's over again, dude. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like there's something about, especially with like your focal point characters in the series are very simple people. Like your focal
Mm-hmm.
point for this series is the hobbits. And
Right.
so like they're so simple and that, like you said, they're down to earth. And so once you reach the third book, you're like, things are so complicated for this poor little chicken nugget. He just wants to go home and have 11 C's. Like, please, God, save him already. Like, let him go back in time. This fucking sucks for him. And even like you watch the movies and Frodo's like, I can't be happy here anymore because of all the shit I've seen. And you're like especially for someone who has PTSD and I've been traumatized in my life, I'm like, yep, like you just there's something about it. Like when I was talking about weapons, it was the same thing of like you're supposed to like live this normal life and you're like, I have all this trauma and shit going on in my like in my head, like I have to deal with all this shit. Like Frodo saw so much shit that he's just like, I have to live with this and I don't know how to do that, especially in a place that's so simple like the Shire. Like everyone's like, oh, we're drinking and dancing, and he's like, remember that time I was covered in lava almost? Remember that time my finger got bit off? And you're like, true, my guy, true. Like that is rough for you.
I know. He didn't even
But
let it out. No trauma dumping. Frodo kept it close to the
well,
chest. And then, you
he
know,
really did.
God gave him a pass. But, you know,
And then he just pieced the fuck out at the end of that movie. He's like, I think I want to move on. I just want to die. And you're like, that's kind of sad when you think about it.
well,
So
we won't get into it because you've seen the movies, but the books, he doesn't die. I mean, eventually he dies, but he goes to the Undying Lands and then gets
he gets to
healed.
live forever.
No,
Oh,
he
cool.
dies, but because he's immortal. Amortal, not immortal. Amortal. But
Big difference, actually.
big difference, big difference.
If you want to
But
live forever, don't sign up for being a mortal.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, read the fine print.
Yeah.
Read the captions. Um, you know, you brought up weapons. You know, kind of Frodo's PTSD, and obviously Frodo saw like literal horrors, right? And then
Yeah.
experienced real psychological horrors too. On top of that, um, with battles, but obviously the Nazgul, the freaking for Shelob, various orcs kidnap him and try to kill him at multiple different stages. But
You've got the Balrog too.
oh, the Balrog, huge, right? And he sees,
Oh yeah.
you know, Gandalf, who's like one of his close friends besides Sam and his obviously Merry and Pippin, and it's like the fatherly figure, and he's gone. He's killed by this literal demon,
Demon.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I think, you know, horror has been a wildly popular genre, right? In the modern world, going back to the gothic novel, like I teach it in my high school class, right? We have a whole Gothic novel section. But why do you think that its popularity has grown? I feel like it's grown. Maybe you know more about it over the years and like why people are so attracted to it. And if I'm wrong about that, like maybe just talk about the access to horror maybe and bring the community closer together, and maybe why it still brings people together.
I think first of all, you have this online community because like back in like the 80s and 90s, if you liked horror, you were kind of weird. Like it'd be one thing if you're going to watch a Freddy movie with your friends to like fuck around. But like once you got into the 2000s and the computer age, and you like especially I think of different like prolific horror movies that really changed how the world viewed horror versus like the horror community viewed horror, right?
Mm.
Like people who are plugged in have a different view than people who are not plugged in. And so like a big shift in the horror genre was the Blair Witch Project. And the reason that shift happened was the internet and the internet marketing and the weird like missing persons feel to that movie and then also to the marketing. Like they literally were like they signed like an NDA. They weren't supposed to like have acting for like at least a year or something like that. Those actors in that movie, they weren't supposed to come out and talk about it for a year. Like they had to be hush hush because the whole like the whole like advertising bit was these people are really missing. Like they're really gone. They were real people and they really went missing in these woods. And so people on internet forums were just like frothing at the mouth, like, what the fuck is this? So like that's like your first like internet sleuth, like real shift. And that's like the average person got interested in horror at that point because of that marketing technique. Like even dad will tell you, like, he was like, oh yeah, I went and saw the Blair Witch because like Blair Witch Project was everywhere. People were like, these people are really missing. And it was something like super huge for the genre. And then after that, you had these, so you, that kind of like kickstarted people talking about horror online en masse. And so since then, it's just kind of snowballed where you have now like horror fans going to conventions and you have like, you have Monster Palooza and you have the Overlook, things like that, where people who are specifically horror oriented are coming together. And then I think another thing is that a lot of people in the industry, like there was a big shift with that and with Jaws, where horror was kind of like B movie material. And then slowly people were like, oh, this can be good and like make a lot of money. And so that kind of made Hollywood take horror more seriously because like in the 80s and 90s, you could make a killing off of just being a B movie schlock guy. Like, there are guys who just literally did B movie schlock. And it was like dumb, bad acting, bad writing. Yeah, tits flying everywhere. Like it was like that kind of a thing would sell and you could make a living off of doing that. And if you were taking horror seriously, it wasn't very often that you sold a ton. So now that there's like this shift in like horror can be serious and people like that, especially I think another shift is like 9/11, which is like really a weird thing to bring up. But 9/11, a lot of people lived through the horror of 9/11. And so like people, like they say art reflects life, right? And so when you have people, and our generation has been at war basically since we were born.
Yeah.
For as long as we can remember, we've been at war with someone. And so everyone either knows someone who served and saw stuff, or knows someone who knows someone, or their family member, or it was them, or something like that. And then also like violence has just been blatantly displayed on the news so frequently. And even now, like there was literally last month a Kick streamer who died on stream.
Jeez.
And this was over in France, and they basically were making money off of beating the shit out of this guy. People would send in donations to be like, choke him, do this to him, do that to him. And his health was bad, so he died on stream. And so you have all this stuff happening that people are taking in that they want a way to process it, and horror is a way to process it. Like watching Weapons, the first thing I thought when watching that movie that really like hit me as prolific was like, this movie was written and directed by a guy who has been hurt, deeply hurt by a family member. That's what this movie is it's this guy processing his hurt from a family member and like a trusted adult, right? And so like horror is an outlet for things like that. Like you see a lot of like the Babadook kind of like kickstarted a bunch of horror as grief. How does it look to grieve in the horror genre? And so That was really popular for a bit. And so people taking horror and just kind of running with it and applying it to their own experiences and making it serious and making it like, yeah, I think that's why we've gotten so much more horror and why it's so much more popular than it used to be, because people can relate to it. Um, Especially like home invasion movies, people relate to that. Serial killers, people always relate to that. And then you have a bunch of people who, like, even if you just look at um, specifically Lord of the Rings, right? You have Peter Jackson, who started off with Brain Dead or Dead Alive, which was a horror comedy. He did a more serious horror called Heavenly Creatures. He did another horror comedy called The Frighteners before you had Lord of the Rings, right? So he's already consumed a ton of horror content, and you can tell just watching like Dead Alive that he really like. You're like, okay, this guy knows his horror movies, kind of a thing. And then he's got Lord of the Rings. And after that, he goes on to direct King Kong, which King Kong has been done like 7 different times as a standalone film.
He
And
tried
like
to do that
excluding
for
Skull Island, excluding the Godzilla movies.
yeah, he tried to do that
He
first
went.
before he tried to do that first before Lord of the Rings, and
I did not
it
know
got
that.
accepted, and then it got scrapped, and then he went into Lord of the Rings. Sorry to interrupt your flow, but just a fun fact.
No. That's yeah, that is a fun. I love that. And he did the Lovely Bones as well, which I didn't know. That fucking blew my
Oh,
mind
I didn't
because
know
the
that
Lovely
either.
Bones. Yeah, for those who don't know, the Lovely Bones, it's a story about a ghost of a girl who was assaulted and murdered, who is trying to figure out how to like convey to her family who did it and also like that she's okay now, you know. So it's crazy that Peter Jackson did that film as well. I consider that very much a horror. I mean, she's literally a little girl haunting her own family and trying to figure this out. But you have so Peter Jackson, the head of this project, very horror informed, clearly very horror oriented. Vigo, this is crazy. He was in Texas Chainsaw 3. He was in Psycho 1998. He was
Hmm.
also in a movie called Passion of Darkly Noon, which I had never heard of before, but it has him and Brendan Fraser in it. And I was like, it's got like a 5 out of 10 stars, but I was like, that's worth it just for both of them. Like Brendan Fraser and Viggo Mortensen in the 90s.
It's over. It's a done deal.
It's a done deal. And then Elijah Wood, before you have him before Lord of the Rings, he's in The Good Son as a kid, and then he's in The Faculty, which is like a cult classic at this point, where he's a high schooler and these aliens are taking over the school. And since then, he's been in the remake of Maniac. He's done the remake of The Toxic Avenger. He's in that. He's in a movie called Come to Daddy. He's in a lot of horror stuff. So
He's
he's clearly
directed his
very
own
horror
horror
oriented.
movies too.
Yes, yeah. He's very like it's so funny to me how he's so horror oriented now. Like he's like one of ours. We consider him one of ours as horror people. Like
I love
we
it.
stole Frodo from you guys. And then you have Carl Urban, who's in Ghost Ship, Christopher Lee, who is just an incredible guy. Like if I could talk to anyone who is deceased, it would be Christopher Lee. Because he has just such an interesting life story. Like everyone knows the story of like the scene where he gets stabbed. He literally Peter Jackson's like, no, you're supposed to yell, and he's like, listen here, son. I've seen people get stabbed before, and that's not the sound they make. This is the sound they make, and you're just like, just a reminder that Christopher Lee fought in wars. Okay,
And he was
like
in the
that guy was
special. He was in special forces.
he was like just an interesting dude. The year before he died, he dropped a metal album. And then in the horror genre, he's very prolific in The Wicker Man because without Christopher Lee, Wicker Man would not have get made. He really helped propel that movie forward and its production forward. He plays Lord Summerisle. He sings in that movie. He's so fucking charismatic and cool in that movie. And then he's just got his deep baritone voice and you're kind of like melting from it. It's amazing. He's just so good. You have Andy Serkis, who literally, same year as Two Towers, comes out in this movie called Death Watch. And before like Lord of the Rings, Andy Serkis was really more of a drama actor. And so this is like his big shift into like, oh, I want to play villains in fucked up movies. And so like him in Death Watch is amazing. I think sometimes he goes a little over the top, but I'm like, do your thing, Andy Serkis. Do your thing, man. You've got Brad Dourif plays Wormtongue, and for those who
Oh,
don't know, that's Chucky. Like literally the doll. So yeah, like you have a bunch of people who are in this industry who are very interested in horror. And so I think they're taking it more seriously. And so now, like, everyone else gets to take it more seriously. And then everything is obviously propelled by money. So, what's going to make money? It's a lot harder to make any film these days, I've heard, because everything just costs so dang much. Do your yawn, dude. Do your yawn. Do it. Let it out.
No, I'm not doing it.
But now you have these guys who are like, no, horror, we can make you money off of horror. And so studios are like, oh, okay. And then you have whole production companies like Blumhouse who are literally just horror oriented and they don't produce anything else. So very, very interesting shift. And just like, I think a lot of it is like people want their art to reflect their reality. So,
yeah. No, I love that. You kind of took us down the road too of like, I mean, horror is not different than any other art as far as human expression goes, and I think that, it's not really. I mean, I guess it's got some taboo now, but not like it did back in like the 80s and early 90s, probably because there was the Satanic Panic was on full freaking blast, and like I think that now that people understand that it's just an art form, generally in pop culture, and it's a way to express human emotions and trauma, just like other art. I mean, Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, and partly people have argued to deal with his PTSD or shell shock from World War One, right? He had a son who served in World War Two, just things like that. But then on top of that, when we get to Peter Jackson and the movies, like The Lord of the Rings has a heritage of horror within its own thing. And Tolkien, like Kelly is reading the books for the first time, and she read the first one, and when the Nazgul were like sniffing for the hobbits, like Kelly was like, this is legitimately scary. Like she hasn't seen the movie, she just read the book, and she was like, this is legitimately scary. So, and people have talked about Tolkien being a decent horror writer, and at least for Kelly's experience, she felt that way too. But I guess too, so going from thinking about the heritage that Peter Jackson himself has done, like in the horror genre as like a director, and then of course all the actors that were a part of that in their career leading up to the Lord of the Rings movies, like, do you think that, the horror tropes and the methods, that Peter Jackson uses, and maybe even the actors that he cast for their certain roles, do you think that he was effective or ineffective in, bringing about that horror stuff?
Oh, I think he was very effective. I remember like the first movie being so tense when the ring wraiths are like looking around for them and they're like hiding in that log. And I was just like internally vomiting from the amount of stress. And I wish I could like rewatch all of it from like my new perspective of horror, like completely like no remembrance of what the movies are. Like if I get amnesia, that's like one of the first things I want to do is rewatch Lord of the Rings and like film my genuine reactions to them, because there's so much good horror. You've got the ring race hiding and then also stabbing them at the end. That scene freaked me out as a kid. Just them quietly, silently, like gliding into the room and just ceremoniously stabbing into the pillows. I was like, and then it's like the other end across the street. Yeah, and the music, which like people underestimate like sound. I'm sorry, the dogs are like they're bullying each other.
Speaking of sound,
yeah, for real, they're over here bullying each other. Yeah, no, like sound really affects a moment, and like if it's horror or funny or whatever, like sound really does do a lot. Like I think it's like 70% of a jump scare's effectiveness is the sound they use when they do the jump scare. Oh, yeah. And like these aren't jump scares, this is like classic like suspense building. Except Galadriel going Gollum for a second, that was a jump scare. And as a kid, I just didn't process for me. I was like, oh my God, she's a bad guy. What just happened? I was like, she's the devil, actually. Like, for a long time, I thought Galadriel was a bad guy because that scene just like, and you didn't like that scene. I remember you being like, stopping the movie a couple of times before that scene happened because you're like, I don't want this in my
Oh
life.
yeah, the voice change,
It's
everything.
so effective. Like I was talking to a friend last night or the other night on stream, and she was like, "That scene got me as a kid," and I was like, "Same," because I was talking about how I was going to be on this podcast and everything, and she was like, "That really freaked me out as a kid." Like Galadriel's just her voice deepening, and then her expression changing and darkening, and then the lunge, and you're like, kill me, I'm done.
Yeah.
So Galadriel, and then I think Gollum himself is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like a lot of kids are terrified of him. Our cousin's kid, her son was just terrified of Gollum. Like Gary, I had to shut the movie
Interesting.
off. Yeah, like he would try to do the like Gollum sounds and he would freak himself out, so he couldn't really do it. And then like he would like when Gollum would like be on screen, he had to leave the room. Like he just couldn't handle. Like he'd be like peeking around the corner and then just get too scared and like have to go away and like. So I think Gollum himself, like, I mean, second, third movie, you're like, he's just a little guy. Like he's a freak, but he's just a little guy. Like you could probably punt him. Like he's just so small. But
Yeah.
and then obviously Moria itself, I think, is really underrated as like a horror setting
Yeah.
because being trapped underground is terrifying. And then they come into that room and all these skeletons are sitting there. That as a kid, I was like, this is bad. You need to leave. And that's always like a really effective horror moment is when you go into a place that's just giving those vibes and you're like, you made a bad choice. Get out, get out, get out, bro. And then the squid out front, everything about Moria is like, no, this is such a bad idea. Like,
I guess that's true. That's like the Nazgul will probably kick it off, but then, like you
yeah,
said, Moria is like the full entry into like a dungeon of horror. Where at first there's the Watcher in the water, the squid, right, and it's this literal monster. They get locked in
yeah,
it. It's dark. There's death, right? It's not a mine. It's a tomb, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And so,
And then like there's all these skeletons, and you're like, oh my god. And then Gimli is so like, and John Rhys Davies really sells it. Like he's just like horrified and heartbroken because these are all his people that are just hanging out and here dead, like so very fucking dead. It's like, bro, when was the last time you sent a letter over here? Like they've been dead a hot minute. Like,
well, and then then not on top of that, there's goblins, a cave troll, and then of course a literal demon. That's
yeah.
just chilling at the bottom of the mines of Moria.
Oh yeah. Which me, I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever fucking seen in my life. When the Balrog appeared, I was like, that guy's awesome. You were
Yeah.
like, I'm done. Like I have to leave the room. You were like, fuck that guy. I'm out.
One of the coolest cinematic
Yeah.
monsters too. The coolest like unique design, the roar that it has. So cool.
Oh yeah.
So cool.
Well, even like the Nazgul, right? Like apparently whoever did the sound design for them was like, I knew immediately what sound I wanted them to make. And it's literally like a fucked up donkey's braying. So it's literally a donkey coming out of that thing's mouth. And you're like, I don't know why that works, but it does. Like, and there's so many animals that like sound guys would be privy to that we don't because like they're not in our environment, but there are so many weird noises out in the wilds that you can just capture and throw into your fucking movie and you're like, yep, I'm done. That messes me up, dude. I'm fucked up now.
Yeah.
Like, and donkeys are like, they make scary sounds. I even think so, like going on to the second film too, and the scary stuff in that, like tree ants could have been so fucking scary. Like
Triettes?
tree ants,
Oh,
like the
ants.
ants.
Yeah, ants.
Yeah. Like they're not because they're like once you get to know what they're like, you're like, oh, these are like cute little old men basically that are trees. But if they weren't, like just thinking about like these are living trees that are watching you and they can talk to the other trees and communicate with them and they know where you're going, they know what you're doing, and they are so much stronger than you and they can be faster than you. Like that's horrifying.
I mean,
Like
it's horrifying to the orcs, right? They show up to and they
exactly.
literally destroy Isengard and kill everybody.
And they flood the place and you're like,
Well, I think about the
oh
trees
my
in the Wizard of
god.
Oz, the apple trees on their way, like those trees,
Yeah.
like legitimately look scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it reminds me, like, it's so funny because I'm like, the trance could have been the tree from The Nightmare Before Christmas. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
with his, like, hanging skeletons, and he's like, everybody scream. Like, if a trance came up to, like, if a tree came up to you and did that in real life, like, I would just be done. I'd be like, you can eat me now because I need to die. Like, I
Well,
have
and
to die.
they kind of do this in the extended editions of the movie and the Fellowship, I think. But in the book, there is a tree called Old Man Willow, and he's like a corrupted tree. But he literally tries to kill Sam because he's
Yeah, that's
annoyed that
terrifying.
Sam sleeps on him, and so he tries to get him in his root and tries to kill him essentially. So
That's
like you said,
horrifying.
trees are, even though the Ents are on the good side, like there are trees that are wicked in even in
Yeah.
Tolkien's legendarium. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that would be nope, nope, nope. Like even just walking through the woods, getting picked up by a tree, like horrifying. Like Merry and Pippin should have had heart attacks and died like so many times. Like just from being like, we're wee little men who have nothing to do with this conflict. Like, whew. And then like the swamp of not sorrows. I don't know what that swamp is called. That thing is straight from a horror movie.
Yeah, the
Like
dead marshes, yeah.
the dead marshes. Like literally, it reminded me a little bit of like our text dying in the swamp, but then also it's just like I mean, like it reminds me of that scene in Jaws where Ben comes out of the boat, the bottom of the hull of the boat. You know what I'm saying? And it's just
Hmm.
his floating head and his floating eye, and he's dead and stuff. That's like the vibe of that marsh, and it is so intense. Especially like they're like follow this path, and if you stray off of it, you're gonna fucking die. Like that's horrifying. Like it is like the sound for it while they're walking through there. If you haven't seen it in a while, just go replay it. The sound is really good, and then just like the vibe of it and the all of the practical effects in these movies and the CGI are amazing. Like they're
Oh
really
yeah.
tight, really well done. So the swamp of not sorrows, the marsh of the dead, right? Is that what you just said?
It's called the Dead Marshes. That
Dead
might be
marshes.
called that. I don't remember. That Tolkien has like five names for every single person and location. So
So
yeah.
probably everything we've called it so far is
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Even the swamp of not sorrows, he's like, that's correct.
Correct.
Wargs, I think wargs could be scary if you're like a kid. I always thought they were really cool. I was like, I'd like to ride one of those, but they're just like fucked up little hyenas. Well, fucked up big hyenas,
I
basically,
mean, they're
like
monsters, you
oversized
know.
hyenas that are like yeah, they're like monsters. Like you see them in other things too. And I'm like, I'm sure they've borrowed them from Tolkien's fantasy world. But like, yeah, wargs are like they're horrifying. Like they want to eat you, which is really sad because I just want to ride one. And then you have like in the second movie too, I think something that's really like it's kind of glossed over because it's such a funny moment. And like Peter Jackson has done horror comedy, right? So like he can balance like the morbidity with like the humor and strike the right tone at the right time. But like when he's like, meat's back on the menu, boys, and they rip one of their own to pieces and eat him, I'm like it's so funny, but also like that's so fucked up.
They
Like that's
literally just did
crazy.
cannibalism.
And literally, like I remember like thinking like, oh my god, that guy just like flings the guy's intestines, and you're like that shows a lot. Like, oh my gosh, like it's not like bloody, right? And especially like something that people will do to kind of get around different ratings and like different movies have done it over the years. Like Evil Dead used black blood instead of like red blood because they were going to get an X rating and they were like, this movie is never going to sell anyway, but especially not if it's X rated, which Jokes on them. That movie's great and it sold a lot of copies. Get wrecked. But like it like they would do stuff like that. So instead of like blood being red, they would make it green or they would make it black. And so I think Peter Jackson kind of does that and uses like the fact that it's dark and the moonlight and everything and the darkness of the shots to kind of like skirt some ratings. Cause I was like, that was a guy's intestines. You can't fool me. Like
Well,
you're
there's a
just ripping
part
that thing to
when, I mean,
pieces.
even Aragorn cuts off Lurtz's head in the first movie, and there's like blood splurting from his freaking, neck,
Yeah.
but it's black blood.
Yeah. Which is why like you can kind of skirt around ratings with stuff like that. So
Interesting.
it's a very clever horror movie trick. Yeah, so if you ever see that in horror movies and you're like, why is it black or green instead of red? That's literally why. Because if you have so much blood in a movie, they'll give it a worse rating. And obviously, Peter Jackson's not trying to get like an X rating for Lord of the Rings. He wants people to go see it. And like, I'm one of those people that I'm like, okay, suck it up. Like, it could have been red. It's fine, to the rating people, but like, they wouldn't accept that. So, like,
Right.
you got to make it black or something else. And then obviously the third film has some of the most like obvious horror tropes. Giant fucking spider is like one of the biggest horror tropes. Like I remember being a kid, Nana, our grandmother owned a video store when before we were born, and like right around the time we were toddlers, she had to close it. But she had all these VHS tapes. That's how old we are. VHS tapes were a thing when we were kids. Um, but she had all these VHS tapes that she had from her store, and she was a really big horror fan. So like I remember one of my favorite movies as a kid was the giant tarantula movie, and it's
Oh,
literally
yeah, I
just
forgot
like
about that.
in the 50s there was this big panic about like nuclear shit and what it would do to people and things and stuff, and that's why you had like them and the claw and things like that. And then that you also had giant tarantula, and like it was literally just a spider who got you know irradiated basically, and it just turned fucking huge. And it was like they built these little sets for this spider to crawl over, which I think is really cute. Now I'm like, that spider's like, shit's all in my way. Like just, and they're just like filming him. He's like trying to get back to my lair. What is this shit? It's the most work I've ever had to do. I'm a pet, y'all. But like giant fucking spider has been around since at least the 50s. And then the original King Kongs too had giant fucking spiders.
Right.
Like, and of course Peter Jackson's does too, which makes me want to vomit and die. It's
The
awesome.
bug scene in that is horrifying in King Kong.
No, like the centipede scene, I wanted to kill myself
I
because I
think I
was
actually,
like,
when we saw it in theaters, I think I closed my eyes during that part. Like, I think I full on put my hands in front of my face with the
yeah,
bug scenes.
yeah, because it was way too much. And the leeches that come out, he's very good. Like I want him to direct more straight up horror because he would do such a good job with it. Like just looking at the Lord of the Rings and the way he builds tension, and none of it's like cheap jump scares. Even Gladriel, she's a jump scare, but the difference between like a good jump scare and a cheap jump scare is like a cheap jump scare is like when I am walking by your door and you happen to open it and I just go bah, and you're like, that's a cheap jump scare. A good jump scare is when it's the middle of the night and I slam the washing machine door and you go, hello? Is someone there? And I don't say anything. I just make a bunch of random sounds until you start walking toward me going, hello? That's like building suspense, building tension. So then when I jump around the corner and I go, bah, and you nearly die of a heart attack, that's actually like a good horror. Like you're building the suspense. So it's not just one
That's
and done.
and that's not hypothetical, listeners. That is a straight up thing that happened. And Hannah built up suspense for me many a late night as I was doing laundry or walking around the house, and she decided to scare the shit out of me.
I always say Nick used to annoy me, and that's how I would get him back.
It's
Like
true.
I'm good at annoying other people, but I don't annoy Nick. He's just impervious to it, so I have to scare him to get back at him. But like with Shelob and like, oh my gosh, the scene where he's stuck in the webbing and swinging Sting around like frantically, and like you can just see the shadow, and Gollum starts singing that creepy ass song, and I was like, I'm gonna punch this kid in the face. What the fuck? And like, it's just so good. Everything about it is incredible. And it's just so well done. And then especially like finally when Shelob gets him, you're so like, because he doesn't even see her until he turns around, he gets stabbed, and all that foam comes out of his mouth, and you're just like, oh my god, he's dead. You're
And
like,
then you
he's dead,
finally
he's
see the
dead.
fullness of Shelob, and she's, wrapping him up.
Yeah, that scene is like that stuck with me so hard. I was like, fuck spiders, dude. I'm still like, fuck spiders. Like, spiders can die, dude. Like, if you like spiders, that's cool. There's some nice ones. I get it. But like that spider, no, no, no. We don't take no chance of
No,
Shelob, dude.
Shelob is a goner. Send her away.
Yeah, for real. Machine gun, bazooka, whatever, flamethrower, whatever you gotta do, dude. And then Sam just like takes her on with his bare hands, and I'm just like stressed the whole time because I'm like, you're just a little guy. Like, oh, so good. And that, like I said, done so well. And it's not even a jump scare when she finally reveals herself, but you're mortified.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might have even been better if it were a jump scare because then at least you'd get, oh, and then you get over the initial, but you're just like continuously mortified because she starts wrapping him up. And then you also have, I think, another like really big, obvious horror flag is Ghost Army. You have Ghost Army,
Right.
army of a bunch of dead guys just laying around haunting this cavern until Aragorn's like, how about you come haunt these other assholes? And they're like, bet. And I think I always, I always quote, the way is shut. And like, my mom will be like, oh, mom will be like, this is closed. And I'm like, the way is shut. And she's just like, what
It
are you
was
doing?
made by those who are dead.
I'm like, the dead keep it. And she's just like, all right, whatever. Keeps doing her thing. Oh, so good. I love those guys.
Now, one of the things I think you said, and I think that what Peter Jackson really does well, because I think Tolkien wrote legitimate horror scenes in the movies, or sorry, in the books rather, because he
Mm-hmm.
was also expressing that dark side of humanity or the horrors that we face psychologically, etc. And it kind of comes out in these different ways. And I think what Peter Jackson does is that he not only visualizes it in a way that I think captures the horror that Tolkien was trying to, at least to an extent, right? You're not going to get a one-to-one from any adaptation, but
True.
he also uses it to, like, the Frodo being stung part, like you said, it brings together the horror and the sort of panic, anxiety, sadness that audiences face, and of course Sam literally faces all at the same time, so we can empathize with the characters, but then also get us more deeply wrapped up in the story.
Yeah.
So I think
It's
that,
so invested. Like,
yeah,
by the time Frodo actually turns around and gets stabbed by Shelob's stinger, you're so invested in that moment. Like, I don't care if I pee my pants right now. I'm not getting up to go pee. I'm not leaving this scene. Like, I have to see this through. Like, I remember being a kid just being like engrossed in that scene in the
mm-hmm.
theater and just like, God, what is he gonna do? Like, my thought was like, you don't come back from that. He's dead. R.I.P. That ring. Someone's gonna find it on his body here soon because like he's dead.
Yeah, yeah. Sam
Good stuff.
also, Sam is Sam's the final girl, you know what I mean? Like,
I think Frodo and Sam are both final
I could,
girl.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
Like, I think it's so funny because there's not like a ton of horror tropes throughout all of Lord of the Rings, but Frodo is for sure final girl, and same with Sam. Like, they are final girl material. Like, literally, the ring is the temptation that the final girls have to fight, and both of them fight off that temptation. Like, because final girls, right? You have your final girl flags, right? Like, she's a virgin, she's fighting the temptations around her of like sex and alcohol and partying, and she's a good girl and she just wants to do her thing and study or whatever the fuck and like be good to her friends. And then like Frodo and Sam both go on that list. I'm so sorry. They
Oh,
just
they
do.
fit all of it. Oh yeah, they fit all
Yeah.
of it.
and they overcome impossible things, and they're constantly fighting, and you're rooting for them. Like as much as like a lot of the times you root for like Freddy and Jason, right? Like I root for Freddy when I watch a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, except the first one, fuck that Freddy, and except the remake, fuck that Freddy. But the other Freddys are like fun and they're quippy, and Robert Englund does such a good job of like bringing character to Freddy. Like he even points out, like the dude is covered in burn scars, but he wears a fedora because he's vain, right? Like he just knows these things about, and it all comes across really well. But you still want Heather Langenkamp's character to live. Like you don't want her to die. You're like everyone else can die, but we need her to live. Laurie Strode, like you're like, I mean, other people can get stabbed by Michael. That's totally cool. Like if he wants to like, you know, skin a cop's face off and make it into a pumpkin, like fine, whatever. But Laurie has to live. And like same with Sydney Prescott is my favorite final girl. Absolute all-time favorite final girl. And I'm like, she has to live. Like all of her friends can die, but she has to live. Like as much as I'm rooting for Ghostface because he's so much fun and he's such a dick, like and like in a fun way, kind of like I mean, obviously not if you're the character in the scene, but like you know, you just have all these things where you're like you're cheering for the final girl, you want her to win. She's got the torch that she has to carry, whatever that is. And like for Laurie, it's like these kids have to stay safe, and I'm gonna fight against this evil. And for Sydney, it's like my friends and I are gonna make it, you know, kind of a thing. And same with Frodo and Sam, like they're like, yeah, we're gonna take this ring to Mordor, and our friendship is gonna be the beacon that lights the way. Friendship is my power.
100%. The power of friendship, full display. Sailor Moon, the final girl, it's all there. It's all there.
Yep.
Well,
Insert the SpongeBob high five meme with the rainbow over it.
Well, and even with the, you know, people like Freddy and, you know, some people celebrating that, like there are people in the fandom who are Sauron, and then Morgoth is the other big bad where Sauron came from, or who he used to work for. Like people root for them. Like there are fans, there are Sauron stands, right? And you get it, especially like connecting it to the horror villains and those type of tropes. But it sounded to me it sounds to me like we both feel like horror and Peter Jackson bringing those elements is 100% necessary to the success of Lord of the Rings.
Well, it's 100% necessary to the success of any fantasy series. And like Tolkien was so serious about his fantasy series. Like he told C.S. Lewis, like, your series isn't a real fantasy series because it doesn't have this and this and this. And C.S. Lewis was like, why are you attacking me like this? You know, kind of a thing. Their relationship was so interesting. But like Tolkien was so serious about fantasy, and I think if you have a good fantasy, there are elements to it that you need. You need a little bit of romance because that's reality, that's real life, that's grounding, and you need something horrifying because that's also reality, like that's grounding. You have to have, you know, the full spectrum in order to fill out the world properly. Like our world is not a place of just rainbows and butterflies. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you go, like when we were in Brazil, they were like, oh, be careful because even though this jungle is really beautiful, there's a jaguar that lives right out behind the campground. So just don't go out there at night. And we were like, there's a fucking jaguar living around here, like a jungle cat. And they're like, oh yeah. And like, I remember we were walking through the woods, come across these little chicken tracks in the sand. And so we started following him, and the chicken's like walking, and then you can see when he starts to panic and like run in circles. And then you just see these two giant cat paw prints. And we were like, we should probably head back now. Like sprint back, looking
it's
over our shoulder.
It's hilarious that we freaked out because we literally swam in the ocean. Well, I guess you didn't, but there were sharks, and then also alligators were literally like on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Like it's so funny to me, I'm sure to you too, when people are like, alligators are so scary. I'm like, why are you afraid of swamp puppies? Like that doesn't make sense to me. Like kind of like how Australians think it's weird that we're like afraid of huntsman spiders because they're like bigger than my hand.
Right.
And they're pretty much harmless. Like they don't want to hurt you, and their venom's not very volatile. So but they're because they're so huge, we're like, fuck that spider.
Right.
Like it's crazy. And like it's just kind of like where you live and where you grow up like informs your world. And so like part of that is like these scary things that you just deal with on a daily basis. Like we're so desensitized to like car crashes and stuff, most of us, but like that's a reality we live in, is that any moment someone can just ram their car into our car at 70, 80, 90, 100 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, but they could ram it into us at like 100 miles per hour. And at that point, that's just a high velocity metal death machine that they're ramming into us, killing us with, like trying to kill us with. And like that's just a horror of the reality we live in, that we just you have to accept it and keep moving. And so
Mm.
like I think it's so important to have things like that in your fantasy world, things where it's like, oh yeah, that's the giant death spider that lives up on the mountain, we just don't go over there. It's fine. Like, you know, because like the orcs are like, oh yeah, Shelob's got herself another one, and you're like, why are you even patrolling up here? Like, fuck that, dude. But they're like, this is just how we live. Like, this is normal for us.
Man, yeah, I love what you said at the a couple sentences ago, just about how we live with like the reality of horror, even in like the mundane things like cars and stuff. And it's funny that you say that, because Tolkien literally brings that up about not only like the development of machinery and technology, but he says in his theory about like creating fantasy, which is called On Fairy Stories, where he like literally defends it like through like history of folk tales. He create literary theory and like anthropology. It's insane. But
Yeah.
at one point he says good fantasy helps us escape from these mundane horrors, right? Prisons is kind of what he talks about, the problems that we create, so that we can come back out and then face them, right? Maybe not necessarily car crashes, but like those things are what cause the trauma that we deal with, right? The car crashes, the the wars, the violence that happens to people, and how Tolkien says these are real things that are human made, and good fantasy and good art in general helps us deal with it and then come out refreshed to face those things anew. So
Absolutely. Like that's one of the things I love about watching a horror movie, is like watching it and being like, "Oh, I wouldn't make that decision because that's a mistake." And then it turns out as a mistake and I'm like, "I would have survived that because you're an idiot and I'm better than you." Like, you know, like or you're like, "Well, today I have to do my taxes, but at least I don't have to fight Jason Voorhees." You know, like at least I'm not in that reality, like, or at least I'm not like fighting off a zombie apocalypse or an alien invasion. Sometimes I'm like, maybe a zombie apocalypse would be good right about now. But most of the time, I'm like, thank God I don't have to do that, because like then I don't get to drink Dr. Pepper anymore or coffee, or you know, like it's one of those things where like good fantasy is supposed to do that, and so is good horror. It's supposed to take take something that is familiar to you and make it monstrous, so that the thing that is familiar to you doesn't seem as monstrous. You're like, I can tackle depression, I can tackle grief, I can tackle addiction, or like overcoming my loved one hurting me, because those are like so much easier than whatever the fuck this character is dealing with. Like, I can do my taxes. I'm not taking the ring to Mordor, dude. Like, no, thank you.
dude, so well said. I love your reflections on that, and then the connection is just it was just you landed the plane beautifully. But if people are interested of like finding out about horror, we know about your podcast, but tell us more about like where we can find your other creative outlets and other things, and yeah, tell us where people can find you, Hannah.
So I'm on Substack. I'm Beware the Moon podcast there as well, because I post my podcast to that, and I think it's just easier to have everything under one flagship. So that way you can just type in Beware the Moon podcast wherever. And if it's
Absolutely.
there, it'll pop up. I've got a few episodes on Spotify. I stopped being able to do that, but my older episodes are reachable there. And then all of my new stuff is going on either YouTube, or it's going on Rumble, or it's going on Substack. And then I always tweet out when I post a new video on Twitter at Beware Moon, and then of course on my Substack as well. I also write some. I do some horror short stories over on my Substack. Um, So check that out if you're interested and just like what's going on in that brain.
Hannah's a good writer, you know, and as her brother, you might be like, sounds a little biased to me, but Hannah has been writing ever since I can remember as adolescents, and Hannah has been writing for a long time. So I would say if you want to read some good short stories, it is worth it. So you should go subscribe, and then you should also give Hannah your money too. So
If you have money to give, I appreciate it.
yeah,
If not, that's fine
obviously.
too. You can just give me your likes instead,
Yeah,
or your reposts.
Also,
your
give her,
restags.
give her your social security number, your mom's maiden name. You know,
I won't do anything with it. I promise.
yeah, and the last four of your social, yeah, all that stuff.
It's safe
Okay.
with me.
All right, well, Hannah, this was really fun.
Yeah.
It's always good to hang out with you, and I feel like we learned a lot. We shared fun memories, and then we got super nerdy, which is what this whole thing is about. So thanks for contributing to the Tolkien Pop experience.
Thank you for inviting me. This was lots of fun. Lots of fun. And maybe in a year or two, I'll get around to having read the books and we can do that podcast next.
Yes,
Horror
please.
in the books.
Well, and Hannah, you're a big wolf person. Sauron is literally a werewolf in the Silmarillion, so he's like the king of werewolves. So get your ass on the ball.
Sounds like I might be a Sauron stan now.
Oh, you will 100% be a
saying.
Sauron stan. Yeah, you're gonna go down the internet and you're gonna look up Rule 34 Wolf Sauron. Yeah.
I don't know if I would go that far. Now I'm gonna do it just because I'm curious.
Hannah, well, after this, y'all, Hannah's gonna read the books and become a full-on Sauron furry.
How does that look like? Because I'm just imagining his helmet in the movies on like a wolf man body.
But then it's like
not sexy,
cute. It's
but...
it's like cute eyes. Like it's it's not even like scary. It's like the fun little padded puppy body.
It's a little like tongue sticking out where he's like, "Hear me, one ring to rule them all."
Yeah, so we'll have to do part 2 when you read it, and we will find out if we become furries, particularly Hannah.
Nick's already there. He's already working on that third hole, remember, guys?